Hello and welcome to the Justice Factor. Just a week after they shook hands and said they will work for peace, the deal between the ANC and opposition parties in Parliament is off. What's going on? Are we going to see more fights in Parliament? Dear Parliamentary Leader Musi Maimane and Co-Leader Musiwa Lekota join me today to discuss these and other issues. After that discussion, we'll give you our winner and big loser of the week. But first, to analyze the parliamentary fight and other political issues, we have Professor Somadoda Fikeni from the University of South Africa and Ebrahim Fakir of the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. Guys, welcome to the show. Ebrahim, let me start with you. Do we have a constitutional crisis here with the parliamentary fight?
Well, no, I wouldn't be that dramatic and say we have a constitutional crisis.
Well, the politicians are saying we have a constitutional crisis. It's the end of the world as we know it, isn't it?
Well, politicians say all kinds of things. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily right.
Do you agree with him, Somadoda?
Well, we don't have a constitutional crisis, but we do have a confidence and legitimacy crisis that is afflicting most of our institutions of democracy. Whether you look at Parliament, you look at the public protector, you look at, public broadcaster, you look at different institutions.
Including public enterprises.
Yes. That in itself is just telling us that those are corroding, those are weakening, and yet they were supposed to scaffold and help our democracy to consolidate.
Do you agree with that? And how did we get here then?
To a degree, I think the problem is that we've got several different issues and we need to disaggregate some of them. What's going on in Parliament is certainly a legitimation crisis. There's no doubt about that. And that's precipitated by the fact that you have a majority party which is using its majority in two ways. On the one hand, extremely crudely, and on the other hand, playing silly buggers without necessarily mixing the two. And I'm not sure that either silly buggers or crudity are not always a feature of the political scene. They are. And this is not about questioning the ANC's right to use its majority, even in a crude way. The trouble is they're using the majority in a way in which it doesn't allow the opposition space to air the kind of issues that they want to air. Let me give you one example here. When it came to the ad hoc committee on Nkandla, actually it appears as if that ad hoc committee was purposeless and pointless, because the fundamental question to ask is why would you have a committee which is considering 4 reports which are already in the public domain, which have already made findings in fact. The opposition tried to table or expand the terms of reference or the issues that the committee was going to consider. They were also trying to get in witnesses. They were also trying to investigate different areas which some of those reports didn't cover. They weren't able to do so. When they actually had the debate, it's not about the ability of the ANC to have defeated that debate. They would have. They simply didn't want the issue aired in Parliament, and that is a problem.
What happens now when you have the kind of lack of legitimacy in all these institutions and now in Parliament? What does the electorate say? What's the impact of that? Are we going to see people saying, oh, you know what, the ANC has a majority, it will just run away with it in Parliament and so forth? Do people stop voting? What's the impact on the ANC and other parties?
Actually, the impact could be grave. Remember that many politicians and the very politician image is already coming with a lot of negatives or deficits. Now people may decide politics is not our game. And as such, at the time when generation is off air, now you do have an alternative, which is very unfortunate at the time when you have very serious issues. And secondly, it could turn into antipathy against establishment itself. It's already showing that you have a judicial fatigue where politicians, for the smallest things, they run to courts. A branch meeting, so-and-so was not elected, they go to court and so forth, and they say these things are urgent. If even that last line of defense, which is the judiciary, start feeling the weight, we might as well have the wave of anti-establishment sentiment. More so because 20 years people have been waiting for liberation dividends in the economic and social sphere.
Okay, let's talk about the Ramaphosa intervention, if you will. It's fallen apart now. Both parties had a meeting this today, Monday afternoon, and it seems as if it's out the water. Was it a genuine attempt, in your view?
Well, I think it was genuine. I think he went in with the idea that he did during the CODESA negotiations. We'll put something on the table and we get something in return. The problem is the context is vastly different, firstly. Secondly, he'd placed conditions, and those conditionalities, I'm not sure, were amenable to the opposition because, you know, it was premised on the idea that you would show a certain amount of respect for the executive when they appear in parliament. The problem is when you appear in parliament, you're supposed to feel discomfort. It's the very nature of your appearance before parliament. I can't imagine why you would want a regularized, procedureless, bureaucratized appearance of the executive before parliament.
Both of you, was the opposition naive to go in there and agree to exactly what you're saying?
But that's not what they agreed. Their understanding was that there would be a respect for the rules. The ANC then filibustered on the day after they'd actually reached this agreement. In fact, the DA did precisely the same thing. That's not out of the ordinary. That's within their rights to do so. So I'm not sure there was any naivete. What I think happened was that Ramaphosa's own caucus did not, in fact, fully support the deal that he went,
but
which is why I'm saying...
the caucus didn't fully support the deal either.
Well, I'm not... who said the DA's caucus didn't support the DA? They did. They were happy to filibuster. No, they were happy to filibuster. What I think has happened is not only does Ramaphosa not have sufficient support in his caucus, his caucus has opted for the two extremes, crudity or silly buggers, with nothing in between.
There you do have a clash of expectations. And also the protagonists on both sides, Mmusi Maimane and Cyril Ramaphosa, unfortunately, they do not have a solid political base behind them. They still have to do things in a manner that shows tentative courage, but without the assurance that they will have the backing. Hence, their arrangement would be tentative. But again, the issues that divide the ANC and the opposition are fundamental. Until you deal with those issues, anything which is of procedural nature will simply be symbolic.
What is the future then? Are we looking at a house that on Thursday when it sits is going to descend into chaos again? Next year, the State of the Nation speech and the whole session descends into chaos again?
No, I don't think it will be, by definition, chaos. There will be problems. There will be filibustering. There will be delaying tactics. People will try to push the rules to the limit. I don't think that's unexpected. That's going to happen in politics. But it's had a double-sided effect. You were asking earlier about, you know, does this lead to loss of trust and confidence? Well, we've seen that already. We've seen that in lower voter turnout. We've seen that in the percentage of trust that people have in public opinion surveys, in politicians and political parties. In fact, public institutions outside the politicians and political parties enjoyed higher levels of public trust, but even that is now descending and is going down fairly dramatically. So something needs to happen. But on the other hand, there's been unprecedented public interest in Parliament, no doubt brought about by the shenanigans.
A cynical one, though.
Well, cynical or otherwise, I mean, it's one stimulator for interest in public policy.
Somadoda, Fikeni, you get the last word. What happens now? What should happen now?
We will see the situation getting worse before it gets better, because what is missing is leadership. With elections coming, with NGC of the ANC coming, you are still going to have some of these temperatures growing, and the tripartite alliance having its own challenges. It's the leadership, and leadership.
Somadoda, Fikeni, Ebrahim, Fakir, thanks so much, both of you, for your time. After the break, we speak to Mmusi Maimane of the DA and Teralekota of COPE about the shenanigans in Parliament.